Welcome to the Dr. Francavilla Show. I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Francavilla, board-certified family physician and diplomate with the American Board of Obesity Medicine. I've been helping patients lose weight to treat and prevent medical problems for the last 10 years, and I'm taking what I've learned from them to you. In this podcast, you will learn the science behind why you struggle with your weight and what to do about it, tips for common challenges, work to fight bias about what a healthy weight really is, and improve your relationship with food and your body. Please remember that while I'm a doctor, I'm not your doctor. This podcast is meant to be informational in nature only, not medical advice. Please seek out care from your physician for your specific needs. Okay, let's get started. All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Francavilla Show. Today is probably, I'm so excited for this episode. It's probably going to be one of my favorites because we are talking about the new weight loss medication, the new anti-obesity medication, Zepbound, that was just approved a few days ago. And to talk about this, I have a fellow obesity medicine expert here, Dr. Shelly. Hi, Dr. Shelly.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Shelly is a board-certified internal medicine physician as well as an obesity medicine physician. She is the host of a podcast called Back on Track, Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast, and the Thrive for Life YouTube channel. So if you like the stuff I post, I think you're also going to love the stuff Dr. Shelly has, and you can learn a ton more from her. And she's been featured on CNN, Fox 5 News, Upscale Magazine, and Shape.com. And she also does consults for corporations and employee wellness. So total expert we have with us today to talk about this new medication. So tell us how you got interested in obesity medicine. How did you join this field? How did you become an expert in this and get involved in this?
So it's funny, I never knew about obesity medicine growing up, but when I was in med school, I did my research in obesity, and then I ended up going into internal medicine, thinking it would be a primary care. But my patients were asking all about, how can I lose weight? How can I be more healthier? And myself, I had struggled with my weight since childhood, and so I started to get more passionate, more interested in obesity medicine. I eventually sat and took my boards and then really went full blown with obesity medicine, and I have not turned back. This has been such a passion for me to be able to share with people that it is possible to lose weight. You can do it. You can maintain it. And just to be able to help people in their journeys, in their wellness journey, and to see just the energy that people have when they lose weight. They have less pain, they feel so much better. It's a really rewarding field.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so it sounds like you were like me, like you knew you wanted to do this sort of thing early on in your career, because a lot of people don't discover this as even a possibility until much later in their career. So, well, today we're going to talk about Zepbound, and I have always found this to be a really exciting field, but since the new meds coming out, it's like exploded because we now have some really, really powerful tools to help people. So let's talk about Zepbound. So what is Zepbound and how does it work?
Yes. So if you've heard of the medication called Mounjaro, or AKA Tirzepatide, Zepbound is basically Tirzepatide for weight loss. So it's the same medication as Mounjaro. How it works is that Zepbound actually targets two gut hormones called your GLP-1 and GIP, and it works at the level of the stomach in order to decrease gastric emptying, or basically slowing down your gut. It also helps with balancing out hormones like your insulin, making it more sensitive, but then also it helps improve and increase the different hormones of GLP-1 and GIP, most importantly, which in turn allows people to be able to lose weight. So a lot of my patients, they say that this medication helps with decreasing how they're hungry. They're not as hungry throughout the day. When they eat, they feel more satisfied. And sometimes it helps just to turn off a little bit of the food noise. So you're not really thinking about food. You're able to kind of, I don't know about you, but sometimes it's like, I have to eat and I have to eat right now. You
Oh
don't
yeah.
feel that way.
Yeah,
on
yeah, no,
medication.
it's been
medication.
crazy. So I imagine that, like me, you've been using this medication for the last year and a half or so as Mounjaro. It came out as
Mhm.
Mounjaro for diabetes. And what you said is totally what I've seen. I have had people tell me that they are now full from one piece of pizza or like half of a piece of pizza. And they've never felt that way before, or like a quarter of a cheeseburger, like really small amounts of food now make them full. And you mentioned some of like the hunger, like the brain thinking about food. I actually found that to be really impressive for some of my patients. Some people have said they felt like they had a brain transplant, like they were thinking about food all of the time. And now that's just gone. Like now they can just live their life and do all the things, that their doctor or their coach or their nutritionist has always told them to do, all the things they've wanted to do, but now like they can. So I've been crazy impressed by how well it's worked for a lot of my patients.
Yes. And this has been a game changer for my patients. Like when they come in, you can just see, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the weight loss is just, it's exceptional, really
Yeah.
exceptional.
Well, that's a great
Um,
transition because that is my next question for you. So,
oh,
how much weight can people expect to lose on Zepbound?
yeah. So in the different studies, when they looked at people who had obesity or overweight, actually, excuse me, just obesity, which is a BMI of greater than 30, they lost on average 20% of their weight. And I have to admit, I have some patients who've lost more. I've had some
Yeah.
patients who've lost less. But it is, I mean, to see the patients come in and just so how happy they are to see the weight coming off is pretty amazing. So at least right now, the average is 20%, but you never know how you will respond. Mhm,
Right, right. Yeah, there's some people who will lose less, of course, than that, but
mhm,
certainly people who will lose more. And they just had that other study come out that showed people who'd already lost, like, say, 5% of weight through lifestyle, so nutrition, exercise, still lost like another 20% on top of that. So if you do
yes.
other things with it, that may increase the amount of weight you're able to lose with the medication.
Exactly. It really improves it. It just improves your odds of losing that weight.
And
Mhm,
I don't know the exact number, but it's more than 90% of people who at least lose some weight, at least lose like 5% or more. So
mhm.
almost everyone will at least have some weight loss on this medication too, which is encouraging because sometimes that's not the case with other meds that we have.
Exactly. And the one thing I do want to point out is that if we look at bariatric surgery, the average weight loss is around 25 to 30%. So we're getting very close to the amount of weight you would lose with bariatric surgery. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, it's a game changer. That's why we're both all
Yeah.
big smiles. If you
Yeah.
decide to watch this on YouTube, we're just like thrilled because
Mhm.
not only have we seen this med, but the data is super impressive too. It's not just what we've seen in clinic. Like there's data of 20,000 people to support that this med really is a big game changer for how much weight
Mhm.
people can lose. But of course, all medications have side effects.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me a little bit about what side effects you've seen, what side effects we see in the data. What can people expect that might not be great about the medication?
Yeah, so the most common side effects that people have are going to be your nausea, vomiting. Some people have diarrhea, some people have constipation. It really kind of depends on the person. Really, your GI upset is really the most common side effects that we see. I've had maybe one person have issues with gallstones,
Mm.
but for majority of the people, it's just trying to manage their nausea. And it's different for everyone. Some people, they have no side effects, and other people, they may exhibit some nausea, especially when they forget to eat on this
Mhm.
medication because you're not thinking
Yeah,
about
yeah. So,
eating.
and that's
Mhm.
one thing I think as we prescribe the med more, we learn sort of like the tips and tricks for our patients, right? Which is, well, make
Yes.
sure you're eating regularly, make sure
Mhm.
you don't eat too much at once, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes people eat too close to bed. They get like all this reflux at night because the food's hanging out in their stomach longer. So you do have to kind of change sometimes that relationship with food. Some of my patients have discovered they can't tolerate dairy anymore, and that's something that upsets their stomach and makes it worse. So it is, but I think it's worth pointing out that not everyone gets the nausea by any stretch. So I think we hear a lot of things about that in the press and popular media. It
Oh, yeah.
certainly is a side effect, but I have lots of people who have no side effects on the medication as well.
Exactly. I know definitely in the press they've been looking at gastroparesis with this particular class of medications. And, I think at one point, I'm not sure if the number has changed, but at least last month, the FDA had only 265 cases of gastroparesis. So it's not actually a large amount
Right.
of
With
people that are
gastroparesis
experiencing
being
these.
this like severe slowing down of your stomach
Mhm.
where it's really hard for your stomach to empty and you can have lots of severe nausea and stomach symptoms with
Mhm.
that. So yeah, and it looks like that is going to come out as a potential side effect from the medication,
Mhm.
but it also looks like it's going to be a very rare side effect of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
medication. And since the medication is new, we don't actually know how long that side effect is going to last. So it's very possible that that's not a permanent side effect for the people who have had that.
Exactly, exactly. And we should also, there are certain conditions that are contraindicated or that you should be actually a little bit more aware of. It is contraindicated in individuals who have a family history of medullary thyroid carcinoma or cancer, and people who have the MEN2 condition in their family as well should avoid this medication. Not saying that this medication causes thyroid cancer because it has not been shown in humans, but it was shown in rats, and that's not just Zepbound, that's this particular class, but that is the warning on the label as well.
Yeah, so I think that's something we all ask about, hopefully, before we prescribe the medication. But it's worth pointing
Mhm.
out that medullary thyroid cancer is pretty rare, and so that vast majority of people, kind of get worried. They say, "Oh, my mom has hypothyroidism, or I have
Yeah.
hypothyroidism." Totally different. Just because you have a thyroid problem does not mean this medication is off bounds for you. It's really specifically this medullary thyroid cancer that is not very common where we don't use the medication. And then I always
Mhm.
like to, make sure I'm here for my pregnant moms and breastfeeding moms. You also, at this point, it is not recommended that you take this medication. We don't have any approved medications for those groups of people right now. But, worth pointing out that's another group. But, that's not a very long list of people who can't take this medication. So it is something that a large amount of people do qualify for.
Oh, exactly, exactly. And I
Um,
do want to mention, as far as indications, it is indicated for people with a body mass index or BMI. And for those who are familiar, the BMI just looks at your height and weight. With a BMI of 27 plus a medical condition like high blood pressure, diabetes, or a BMI of 30 and above. That's what it's
Yeah.
indicated for.
And I think it's really important that, I always talk on this podcast. I'm all about losing weight for health. That is my whole mission. That's my whole goal. I'm not about, vanity weight or, trying to get a six
Yeah.
pack. There's maybe a different alternate universe and me whipping people into shape like that. But I'm all about health. And so, I think sometimes these meds have gotten bad press because there certainly are people taking them for quote vanity weight so that they can lose 5 or 10 pounds for a vacation. And it's probably not worth taking on risks and side effects for someone who just wants to lose a little bit of weight. But if you actually have, the diagnosis of obesity or overweight, and we think that your weight may impact your health or it's already impacting your health in a negative way, that's who these medicines really are for.
Exactly, exactly. Because that's what we're all about, trying to improve your quality of life and helping you to live a longer life because of having a healthier life with less weight.
So one thing I didn't prepare a question for, but seems important for us to mention is that just
Mhm.
like all of our other medications for weight, this medication is expected to be used long term. So we would expect that someone is going to take this medication for years and years, possibly like forever. And a lot of times people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. And I've kind of covered this before on the podcast, but really, in my experience, anything you do to lose weight, you have to keep doing, whether that's a specific nutrition plan or specific exercise plan. And it's true for medications as well. If the medicine's working for you, if it's safe for you to continue, you're probably going to have to continue it pretty long term, or you're going to regain at least some of that weight back.
Definitely. And I would say as well, it's important to incorporate both exercise, nutritional habits, because you really want to maximize how much weight that you're able to lose and then be able to create these healthy habits to sustain it over time.
Yeah, and that's
Most
the challenge
importantly.
I get from
Mhm.
other people a lot of times too. Well, don't people have to eat healthy and exercise? Like, of course, we still encourage that with the medicine. And what I find for my patients, tell me what's happened for yours, is it's all of a sudden a
Mhm.
lot easier to do that. It's easier to eat a smaller amount, but it's also a lot easier for many of my patients to just eat healthier foods. They almost crave them a little bit more, or their appetite is down, so they don't care that much what they eat. And so it's a lot easier to eat the vegetables or the salad or the soup as opposed to the heavier meal that they might have preferred in the past.
Yeah, they tend to have less cravings. Like, the sweet cravings, it's not a big deal anymore as it was before. So this medication really helps to take those cravings, just to really allow you to be able to make a more healthier decision instead of like sometimes it happens when you're hungry, you want to eat right now and whatever is available, you're going to eat. You're able to kind of take a break for a second and make a more healthier decision.
Yeah. And then, exercise, I always preach exercise. I say all of us live better
Oh
and
yeah.
live longer with exercise, but certainly that's additive with the medication. But, I've had
Mhm.
people who've lost 100 pounds on this medication, and it's a
Mhm.
lot easier to work out when you've lost like 70 or 100 pounds, right? Like one of my patients, I
Yeah.
see him doing pull ups at the gym now, and I'm like, wow, like that's amazing, right? So it also becomes a lot easier
Yeah.
to move and to do certain movements and exercise when you've lost 20, 30, 40% of your body weight.
Yes, it's so much easier. You're more comfortable. You have less shortness of breath. I've had patients where they're like, man, I can now walk upstairs without breathing hard. I have less knee pain. Like it makes a huge difference. It gives you that quality of life where you're able to do things maybe that you couldn't do before you took the medicine, but things you did when you were younger. So it's kind of bringing you back to that lifestyle. And so
Yeah.
it's amazing what we were able to see with this particular medication.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it really all kind of comes together for people, but definitely something that we encourage, of course. Eating healthy, balanced diet and moving on a regular basis go a long way to health and add up for better change with the medication. Okay,
Exactly.
so one topic that is pretty hot everywhere right now are the
Mhm,
compounded peptides. And I did an
mhm,
episode about these a little bit before, but I've become even more passionate about these since
mhm.
then. I'm already seeing, even before the med was approved, knockoff Tirzepatide that you could
Oh,
buy online. And that was like,
mhm.
quote, compounded. People were advertising it. And so I've done a little bit of a deep dive on this, and there's like no legal way to get semaglutide or tirzepatide that's regulated other than as the brand name drugs. I don't know if you're seeing these where you live, but I think people really need to proceed with caution about anything that's not the real brand name of these medications. I don't. Are you seeing that where you're at?
Yes, definitely with the compound semaglutide. I haven't seen the tirzepatide yet, but the one thing I would say is that even though it's a compound, it's still a pharmacist or somebody who's creating it. So it's not really the brand name, nor has it been studied.
Right.
So, you're really relying on a scientist who's creating this, and you're not quite sure if you would still see the same results if you didn't have the brand name medication. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think the question probably everyone is going to be asking is like, okay, like where can I get this? Where do people get it from? How do they get the medication? I was just at a conference and doctors were like, all right, well, do you have any? I'm like, I don't walk around carrying medicine with me. This is a medicine. Like you need to see a doctor for it.
Yeah.
How would you suggest people, start this medication if they're interested?
Yeah, so definitely see your doctor. Right now, it's not quite available, so they're having to ship it to the different pharmacies. Once it's available, you can talk to your doctor about sending a prescription. It is important, extremely important, that you start off at the lowest dose and taper up according on the indications on the medication, which is usually going up by 2.5 milligram increments every month. Now, the reason being is because you can develop not the side effects if you go up too fast. Now, let's say if you start having some nausea, you can always slow down the taper. You and your doctor can work together in order to find a regimen that works best for you. But it's important to see your doctor where they can look at your history and make sure that you're getting the right dose for you. But definitely it's important that you start at the lowest dose
Or
or
more is not better.
slowly.
More is not better. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wait till you step up, and for some people the lower
Mhm.
doses even work long term on this one.
They
I
go
think
up.
you mentioned a
Mhm.
great point that it's important to see, your doctor to prescribe this so that they are getting your history, making sure it's a safe medication for you. We talked about some of the points, but there's lots of individual variation of why, a med might not be safe for you. Maybe it interacts with it's something
Mhm.
else you're on or something like that. And then they should also be giving you a little bit of customized nutrition advice of what makes sense for you and your body and what you need with the medication. So, make sure you're seeing someone. You can go to the American Board of Obesity Medicine's website. They have a whole list of doctors who've taken the exam to become experts in this. The Obesity Medicine Association also has a list of
Yes.
doctors who, do education on this and are more knowledgeable about the topic of obesity and weight loss. So those are great places to find people who can safely prescribe the medication. Any
Yes,
final
definitely.
thoughts before we wrap up on our Zepbound conversation?
Yes. Well, I thank you so much again for having me. I just want to say definitely for those who are out there, those who are interested in trying this medication, seek your doctor, seek an obesity board certified obesity medicine physician if you have further questions about it. But I am so excited. This is going to be such a game changer. And I'm excited to see how it's going to take the world by storm. We
I
are in
know,
a
I know.
totally
It's
different arena here. This is going to be great.
game changer. Well, Dr. Shelley, if people
Mhm.
want to connect with you or, want to find you, their doctor, even maybe, like, where can people find you? Where are you at?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, or I'm sorry, X, Twitter. You can find me at Dr. Shelley MD, DrShellymD, and then follow along with Dr. Francavelli's podcast at Back on Track, Achieving Healthy Weight Loss. Thank
Awesome.
you
Well,
so much.
thank you so
Mhm,
much. And until next week,
mhm.
take care.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Francavilla Show, where we learn about all things related to weight and health. If you love this podcast, make sure to leave those 5-star reviews and share this podcast with a friend or loved one. If you have a topic about weight and health you want me to tackle, head over to the website, thedrfrancavillashow.com to submit your question. And make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss next week's episode. Take care.